All right, this is where we are going to end up. So this building's pretty much done. I haven't worked out the final layout of the ground floor, but for the purposes of teaching people how to get here, it's done. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I get this concrete sort of look, this texture, and I'll also do the final part of the vines, how the vines go together at the end. Yeah, so let's get into it. All right, we can see here, mixed up a little bit of the stone effect with just a little bit of this light green Vallejo color, and I'm just adding it as a base coat. This is primed, obviously, just primed grey. The primer that you've got to use, I find, for the cork is this stuff. I'm not sure if you can get where you can get this outside of Australia, but you get this at Bunnings in Australia. This stuff actually, it seems to be the stuff that covers it best, that covers the cork best, and stops the colours just fading into it, or soaking into it, sorry. So I've mixed a little bit of green. I'm going to use this sort of light green mixture with this, mostly at the bottom on one side, like you would have in real life. You would have a part of the building that gets less sun than the others. So these gaps, these sort of corners here, and one side and low on this building. So this section here, you know, if we're drawing it here, this section here and this gap here is going to have a slight green tinge to it, just because I think that just sort of, yeah, looks cool. The more sort of color variation you can have, the more realistic it'll look, the more interesting it'll be. If you just say, oh, all concrete is the one color, you're wrong. It's not just one color. There's loads and loads of really interesting colors and textures in concrete, and yeah, that's what we're trying to do by mixing different colors with this stuff. So you can see, if you look at it without anything in it, this color is very, very white. So let's have a look up here. You see how white that is? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of blend it, that white to green. I'll show you the process as we move forward with it, because you put other colors with it, and I use pigments. After this is down, this is a really good base for pigments, because it's got some texture in it. It'll hold the pigments really nicely, and once you wash the pigments into this stuff, it really ties it all in, ties it all together, and it looks quite realistic, I think, anyway. You know, it looks good. So the reason I'm doing this now at this stage is because there's no glass in here at the moment. I am just able to slap this on nice and quickly. You can see if there was glass in here, this would be a bit pain in the ass, but without the glass, it's very easy. Yeah, all right, see you when it's done. All right, this is going to be a quick video on part of a video on how I've made the vines. So you would have seen it on Instagram now, and also probably at the beginning of this video, the hanging vines here that I've made. So this is what you'll need. This is coconut fiber. It's I got this from Bunnings. It's called Brunnings coconut fiber, but it's from Bunnings in Australia. You can probably get it at B&Q, loads of places, garden supply stuff. Use it for hanging baskets. It's like a thing that you line hanging baskets with, so they can still drain. You can use these are just cheap marjoram leaves from the supermarket. You can also use oregano. I think I'm going to go with oregano today, just, you know, mix it up a bit. But anything like this sort of size, the key is really to have it something that's quite fine like that, and yeah, you sort of break it up a little bit more too as well. You're also going to need some of this stuff. Spray adhesive, 3M do a good one. This is a good one. Yeah, I mean, again, it's just spray adhesive. I'm pretty sure it's all the same. Spray adhesive is pretty nasty stuff because it's glue. You don't want to breathe glue into your lungs. I'm not a fucking doctor, but I imagine that's pretty bad for them. They're primarily for oxygen, perhaps tobacco. You know, if you're into that, but certainly not glue. So we're gonna put this fucking thing on. All right. So the idea is to get this stuff I don't need this on actually yet. I don't need this on yet. So I put it on a bit early. I'm just a bit excited about it. So this is what I've made the vines out of. It's this stuff. So what you want to do is you just get it, break it up into manageable chunks. Get a box to put it in, to spray it in. It's getting difficult to video now, isn't it? I'll tell you what, I'm going to come back to you when I've worked out how to video this a bit better. Okay. Get your stuff. Just big chunks of it, little chunks of it. Probably this sort of amount is really where you want it to be. It'll just make it easier later to divide it all up. Now you can do as much or as little as you want. I would suggest the first time you do this, practice with a smaller amount like this. Give it a shake. Mask on. Just spray all this shit on. Get a pinch of your oregano leaves, sprinkle them on. You want to really get a good coating on there. This stuff's super cheap, so you know, whatever, just do it. Keep the mask on for a while. There are some fumes, so I usually just keep the mask on for a few minutes after I've sprayed. Pretty, yeah, like I said, it's glue. You don't want to be breathing glue in. I suppose people in this hobby don't want to be breathing glue in. There are certain elements of the community that like breathing glue. It's probably not us though, is it, guys? So hopefully you can see this, how it's looking now. Sort of move it around a little bit. Give it really good sort of going over with this stuff. And just sprinkled all of that. I should be wearing gloves. I've just forgotten about that. This stuff is super annoying to get out of your fingers at the end of the day, but there you go. You live and you learn. I mean, technically I've already learnt that, but I forgot it. So you live, you learn, you forget, and you relearn. go. So you can see what we're sort of ending up with, I hope. We've got a big, hairy, clumpy mess of stuff, but all of these strands will, the next stage is to prime it, obviously. Do that tomorrow. Just keep adding to it. The more you add to it, the better it'll be. Yeah, that's it. So the more of these little individual leaves that are on each individual strand of the coconut fibre, the better this will look. Yeah, and I mean this stuff's, there's maybe $1 worth of material. Oh, there wouldn't even be $1 worth of material here. This would be cents, like 20 cents Australian, what you're looking at here, and this will do the building that I'll show you at another point in this video. I apologise again for my editing skills. But yeah, let's have a look at it now. Little shit all over my hands. It's really, really sticky and annoying, this stuff. So yeah, if you're smart, wear gloves. That's what it looks like. It looks, yeah, it looks like a big ball of mess at the moment, but it will look cool in a couple of days. So the next stage, like I said, prime it, paint it all one colour, green. This is sort of my go-to colour for that, which is the Vallejo Air. What's it called? Light green, chrome, whatever. All right, see you in a minute. All right, guys. Next step, we are going to paint these green, so they look like leaves. See, I notice I remembered to put my gloves on today. Yeah, so they've been primed this morning before I went to work, and I've left them all to dry. And the paper here, you can see it's just a big, horrible, knotted, disgusting mess of yeah, nasty looking stuff. It looks like something you'd pull out of a drain. It feels pretty horrible too, but it when it's all done, it'll look pretty cool. It'll look like real vines. So let's go. So what you want to do is you want to get it into more manageable sections that you can sort of hold up and spray all over. So something that sort of size, if you can see that. A little chunk there. If you've missed parts of it with the primer, it's not super important. I mean, this is a terrain piece. You're not going to be touching it constantly. Not these vines anyway. Well, I'm not. I don't know what you guys do with your stuff, but yeah, it's going to stick. The paint will stick. Don't you worry. Don't you worry me, old mate. So we're going to get this ready. It's a slightly bigger one, but if it's flat, it's okay. So let's get that there. This does make a bit of a mess, so put something down. You see I've put a piece of paper down here just to catch the worst of it. At the end of all this, I'll give my area a nice clean, as the actress said to the bishop. Yeah, all right, let's get a mask on, because we don't want to be breathing in paint fumes. So I'm going to get the mask set up. This is just vapor. It's got vapor cartridges in it, this one. So this has got, yeah, the vapor cartridges are what you need. And they last for about 6 months. I'll leave that off below. This is our Vallejo Model Air. This is light green. So we just want to chuck a little bit of this guy in there. I've just cleaned the airbrush with my sonic cleaner too, so we're ready to go. All right. And we just, airbrush. You're all familiar with the concept of this, I think. You can do this on the highest pressure setting. Well, I'm doing it on the highest pressure setting. See the colour. I don't know if you can see that colour. Do it. Drop my airbrush. Yeah, so that's that. For those of you playing at home, this is a Sparmax Max 3 airbrush. I don't know if that's a good one. It seems alright. Does what I've needed to do. I mostly use it for base coating. It's pretty reliable. Goes through the nozzles and the needles. It's mostly that little O-ring at the end that seems to get perished or damaged the most. I find that since I got the $30 sonic cleaner from Aldi here in Sydney, it seems to have been much easier to clean. I haven't used any chemicals on it. It's just hot water and the sonic cleaner, and it does a fantastic job. So yeah, can't recommend one of those highly enough. Yeah, so you can see we've painted everything green. There's certain bits of it that are black, but that's fine. A bit of color variation is good. You don't want to go all one color. You can see here, I don't know if you can see there, that's the sort of color we've got at the moment. So what I'll do next is I'll let this dry overnight. It'll dry very quickly because this is just acrylic. And then in the morning, I will get a big brush and I will add some of this guy, which is the MIG Nature Effects Slimy Grime Dark, which is an enamel paint. And I'll soak certain areas of that in this, and then let it sit overnight, probably for another couple of nights, and then I can start to string it out into the long strings for the vines. Yeah, you'll notice that I'm doing this in the garage. Don't do this in your hobby room because it's pretty smelly and loud and all of that stuff. So yeah, see you in the next video. All right, we're going to do the windows now. While the vines are drying, we're going to cut the windows. Couldn't be simpler, really. We've got takeaway food containers from the supermarket. I think I got about 10 of these for $3, so pretty cheap. All you do is you cut them out like this. Obviously, you can only use the flat sections. It just works with a pair of scissors. Keep all these little leftover bits. I'll show you what to do with them later. You then simply cut it into strips. Now, it's not super precise. You can see I've got the back of the building exposed here. I've already stuck a few panels of glass in. You can see we're pretty close with the diameter there that we need. So all I'm going to do now, or not the diameter, sorry, the width that we need. I'm just going to trim a little bit off. Just a blade's thickness, and a little bit more at the bottom here. And you can see now that will fit into that panel. So you can either, if you want to go quickly, you can do 2 at once, or if you want to use less of this stuff, you can cut it individually because you're sort of wasting this section here. But I'll show you how to do that because it's quite quick, and for the sake of a few bucks, who cares, right? So we just chuck a bit of super glue on there. Super glue, you can't use this if you're gluing a cockpit in a plane or something like that because it'll frost it. But for this, yeah, it's fine because we're not I'm going to be spraying the backs of these windows anyway with a bit of grey primer, just to sort of knock the visibility out of them, to make them less, or to make them more opaque. So just while that's setting, I'm just holding this here. Because this is primed cork, it doesn't seem, the super glue is not as fast as it normally is setting. So you can see there, that's 2 windows done, and that's taken no time at all. Pretty straightforward. You can also cut them individually and stick them on too. I've done these individually, but I found some more of these lying around, so now we're going quickly. Yeah. I'll show you the next step in a minute. All right, going to work on the last part of the vines. So the stage that we're at now, it's always good to have gloves on for this stage because it's a bit dirty. So I have sprayed them with the airbrush. They've been sprayed green. That has dried, and I then the next day put the enamel on there, which is just this slimy grime dark from MIG. Now that is pretty much dry. It's been a few days. In this colder weather, it takes a bit longer. If you want to speed the process up, you can put it outside for a bit of time. But basically what you want to do is you get your big ball of crap and you tease out a little bit like this, and you can see that this is just a big mess. And what you want to do is you sort of want to twist it together like that. Now the advantage of the enamel still being a little bit tacky is that that will actually glue it together a little bit for you. It will sort of hold it in place. So you've got that, so that's what it looks like. And you see I've got some green on my fingers from that. So you want to be wearing gloves. You know, you might not be bothered about the enamel, but it's pretty stinky and sticky. So we're just going to stick it there like that. So just get, where's my super glue? Bit of super glue. This is just the stuff from the hardware store. A little bit just there. Then what you want to do is push it down into it, hold it there with the I'm just putting the pressure on it with the actual tip of the glue nozzle. So I'm just holding that there, tease it out a little bit. Now you want it to hang down straight, so do a second point there and press it in with the again with the nozzle. You're using the nozzle to hold it in place, and you can see this one, I want this one a little bit flatter, so I'll put another glue point here and press it in. And you can have you know, different colors, and then what you want to do is get a pair of scissors. So where it's not, let's see if we can get you a little bit closer there by picking this up. So it's a little bit sort of hairy. There's some hairs coming off in funny directions. So all you want to do is just trim them with a pair of scissors, which is quite hard to do with holding a phone in one hand, and not normally how you do it. So you just trim those little bits off that don't look right, that don't look like they're hanging down. Yeah. All right. So finished building. I'm going to show you the concrete effect, how we do that. Some of the things that you'll need: a brush. I use one that's approximately that size. I don't know what size that is. That is an old size 9. It could be a 9, it could be a 6, but find a brush size you're comfortable with. It doesn't really matter. I then also have one that it's just slightly smaller. Again, not particularly accurate, those measurements, but that's fine. Use a bigger one, use a smaller one, whatever you're comfortable with. So what we are going to do is we're going to give it a quick clean. So you will need some of this Chuck's cloth. This is crucial. Get some of this this stuff, because you will need this for the way that I apply it. You need that. So we're going to clean the brushes off a little bit. This one, well, first thing I'll show you is how to apply the pigments, or how I apply the pigments. So just turn him around. So I've left one section completely untouched. So this has just been primed and then coated with the Dulux stone effect. So it's very, very white. It's very crisp. It's very clear. So to do the apply the pigments to it, I use this. This is a fixative from the craft store, and it is for pastel, chalk, pencil, charcoal, oil pastel, and coloured pencils. It's a isopropyl alcohol base, so it works. So what you do, you get your little Chinese food container, spray a bit of that stuff on there, and then you get the concrete, the color that you want. So let's try a bit of a rubble. You don't need to shake it, but I can't help shaking it. This is a MIG rubble color. We get a little bit of that on there. Just put a little bit on your brush, just like I'm doing there now. You see, we're just getting a little, it's barely anything, but you don't need that much. So we want it, the rubble color, you see how dark that is, and there's barely any on there. So you can thin it out with the isopropyl alcohol a bit. And I'm just putting that on where the cracks are, because that's the sort of area where you want the rubble color. When this dries, it will be a very sandy, dusty sort of color. Let's see. Yeah, you can sort of get a decent idea of it in there. That's what it'll look like when that's dry. So that's the isopropyl alcohol. You can just add some of that, isopropyl alcohol with the rubble color. You can just add some of that randomly around. Again, it won't look exactly like this when it dries. So that's the pigment side of things. So where you've got these joins, this is where I'll focus on some interesting things. So we've got a join here, which if you had prefabricated concrete craned into place, like they build commercial buildings today, that's where you would expect there to be mold or streaking or maybe some rust, especially if this is a building that's been left to fall over for 10 years, which is the idea. So let's have a look. We now close that one up. So I use, this is a great color. It's called Starship Streaking, and this works really well for concrete. It's sort of a greeny gray color. And what I'll do now is I will get some of my odorless solvent, put it in a glass jar here. You need hardly any, and I've just got a little bit in there. You get your smaller brush, chuck a little bit on there, and I will go, can you see that? Yes. We just chuck a little bit on that join there, just randomly. Then get some solvent on the brush and just dab it on, and you'll see it start to thin down a bit and start to bleed into the stuff. You can see it dripping there. That's when you get your cloth, get it balled up like that, and then we just run it straight down. It's important that it goes straight down. So that will give you a sort of a greeny grey colour, which is the colour of old concrete that hasn't really been looked after very well. Let's see if I turn that off. Can you see it any better? Not really. So let's go again. We'll just do, this is purely just the solvent with a little bit of the colour still in the brush. So we just add a little bit more and we just build it up gradually like that. So what you can then do, go, that's an all right sort of colour. It's all about having, the more colours you can put in there, the better. So a bit of rust. So it's going to be, you think about what's going to be involved at that joint in real life. It's attached with rebar. If the building's shifted, the concrete's cracked, water's gotten into that rebar, it's going to rust. All right, so there's going to be rust in there, there's going to be mold, dampness. So we just put a little bit of that there, and it's the same process, just add a little bit of the solvent and then draw it down like that. And you just go like that. Pretty straightforward, yeah? So a little bit more with the bigger brush. And this is just simulating the effects of water running down the side of the building. Now what we can also try is, this is a sort of bluer, this colour's got a bit more blue in it. This is a blue for Panzer Grey. So obviously blue is a colour that you would expect to see in concrete as well. I mean, it's, yeah, go with whatever you think looks right for the building that you're making. If you are doing a number of buildings, try to keep a similar palette for these things. I mean, it's likely that the buildings would be slightly different, but made in the same concrete facility, concrete manufacturer. So yeah, they would have a similar colour, and they've been exposed to the same weathering, the same environmental effects. So just be mindful that, yeah, you might want to keep the colours the same or very similar. So that looked a bit extreme, so we just run that down. And then what you can do, where you've got that, obviously that big run there, maybe you want to create a bit of interest here, and we just chuck a bit of rust, but we leave it. And you just experiment with it, you know. Experiment with whatever you think looks good. It's not the end of the world. If you get it wrong and you think, oh God, that really looks terrible, just paint over it. It doesn't take any time at all. You can paint over this as many times as you want. It's not going to clog any detail because you're using texture paint anyway. If anything, it's probably going to look better if you paint over this a couple of times with the texture paint, especially if you've gone really hard on a color and you think, oh, it's a bit much. Paint over it, and you probably still see a bit of it through the texture paint, and that could look really cool. So, yeah, just experiment with this stuff. This is it's a really fun process. I really enjoy doing this, and at the end of it, you end up with something that looks quite realistic. So that's always good too. So where this crack is, there's going to be a bit of rust. There's going to be a lot of blues and greens and all sorts of interesting colors in here. So you just keep it subtle. And you just work away at it. So I'll just keep going like this until I'm happy that it matches the rest of the building. And yeah, it looks interesting. Looks realistic. And that's the end.